He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
This is Media Watch. I'm Colin Peacock. Well, it's been a tough year economically, and this week, the latest and last official data of the year created some confusing coverage. Politicians and pressure groups are also trying to shift policy and public opinion, with at least one eye on the election next year. So this week, I ask a seasoned business reporter how the media should handle the mixed messages on that, and about her own lid-lifting investigation into a big business that went under in spectacular style.
They are seeing those things on Facebook. They're hearing about them on the radio. They're seeing gushy puff pieces in publications. They're seeing shiny things, sparkly things, flying things, and sponsorship and rugby, and that all looks very good.
Also on Media Watch this week, the final show of the year, how the media went to town on another Wellywood premiere, which made it look like the good days were back in the coolest little capital. But are they? Before all that though, with Christmas coming, claims our summer holiday is too long hit the headlines, along with unsettling forecasts of the summer weather we might get.
And finally in this bulletin, rage bait has been named Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year. It describes manipulative tactics used to drive engagement online, with usage of it increasing threefold in the past 12 months. Rage bait beat two other shortlisted terms, aura farming and biohack, to win the title.
That was an RNZ News bulletin from earlier this month, and if you're thinking that whoever reckoned aura farming could be the word of the year over rage bait, well, you're a total idiot who should hit yourself in the face hard with your own hardcover dictionary. Rage bait clearly works. But while the word of the year is normally a bit of whimsical clickbait, reflecting some lame social trend or other from the year, this time the Ivory Tower Oxford word nerds were spot on, as was lexicographer Susie Dent when she told Morning Report this.
It is all really to do with the algorithms of social media, because although we love fluffy cats, we'll appreciate that, we tend to engage more with negative content and content that really provokes us. And the algorithms will then amplify that and, crucially, will actually earn money for the social media platforms and for the influencers too. So we're sort of caught in this cycle.
And the mainstream media is caught in that cycle too. They used to say, if it bleeds, it leads. These days, if it lights up social media's angry algorithms, it's often a news story as well. And as 2025 draws to a weary close here in New Zealand, they're even polarising the weather. The Stuff website recently headlined a yarn about summer weather ahead of us by saying one island would have a hot summer. You had to click to find out which one, needlessly inflaming inter-island tensions. And a few days later, they were at it again with this.
It's going to be a hot, dry summer for most of New Zealand, but one region is in for a rainy end.
Well, if you know what it is, you might as well put it in your headline. Meanwhile, Stuff's rivals for clicks at the Herald ran the same story the same day, like this.
Summer to start hot and dry before late season soaking for some.
Some? Well, that meant people in the Upper North Island who, again, had to click to find out they'd be the ones getting soaked in January. And they were also at it on TVNZ. The day before the official kick-off of summer, One News weather expert Daniel Corbett stared mournfully out of the screen in front of a backdrop that was slashed down the middle, with a sunny beach on one side, pouring rain on the other, and the headline, "Have a Plan B." And his article on what to expect ended like this.
Enjoy the Christmas Day backyard beach cricket match with the kids. Hopefully you don't need the raincoats for it where you are.
Thanks for that. But while neither of those TVNZ videos are online any longer, the rip-off version made by the AI-driven website Infinite Waves is, and it ends like this.
Will this summer be a washout or a scorcher? You decide.
Now, to be fair to Daniel Corbett, he had been warning for some time that our holiday weather would be a bit of a gamble. And back on November the 1st, for example, Daniel Corbett offered us this.
This season there could be close to the average of between 4 and 9 tropical cyclones, with the potential for 2 to 4 severe ones over the entire region. Across New Zealand, we always seem to have 1 or 2 tropical cyclones to contend with over the season. This could be the case again this year.
In other words, you can expect between 1 and 9 cyclones this summer. You decide. Now, as Christmas drew closer, the media kept pressing the weather experts for a forecast for Christmas Day. And last week, Met Service meteorologist Heather Keats tried to tell TVNZ Breakfast it was still too soon to say.
10 days, we're getting some broad brush, but some pretty good trends. So on Monday, I'll start to speak with some certainty.
The next weather segment,
yes,
we should know by
Next Friday, I will
Next Friday,
I'll have a decent Christmas Day forecast.
Yeah, that is always. Thank you so much. You're great.
But this week, when Heather Keats was back on Morning Report...
So you're saying that this pattern where we every few days we're getting a little bit of a south-southwesterly thing coming through, is that likely to continue into January?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'll be honest.
I'll take an I don't know. I'll take that.
You'll take an I don't know.
Last weekend, though, the weather did play ball in the capital for the premiere of the new Avatar movie, and maybe the last one, as we'll hear. And as the stars and the crowds walked the red carpet downtown, the media went to town with live coverage. When director James Cameron arrived, Stuff broke out the breaking news banner, which said this:
Breaking, if Wellington had a king, he'd be it.
Steady on, James Cameron has only just become a New Zealand citizen. Stuff sent Patrick Gower and a crew to live stream the event, which ended up sounding like two premieres at once.
Jack, how good is Wellington? You spend a lot of time here. I've seen you around every now and then. Good to have you back. How good is Wellington today?
Can you really beat a day like today in Wellington? I mean, the whole town came here.
And that made it a bit tricky when it came time to cross live for 3 News at 6.
Yeah, how are you guys? Yeah, I'm just live on the news at the moment. Stay 1 second.
You can't do that anywhere else in the world, can you?
Yes. Yes, I am with James Cameron and his wife Susie Armis at the moment. Give New Zealand a wave, you two, because this is the premiere of Avatar Fire and Ash. This is the director and his wife, James Cameron. Can I call you Jim? Is that okay?
But when they went live to the red carpet over on 1 News at 6, Big Jim, king of Wellywood, was talking to someone else. So TVNZ's James Fleury just went with that.
I don't want to interrupt this interview, but he's looking very dapper.
Absolutely. Now, you said if you stay too long without running to the bathroom, the tissues could also come in there. We're learning so much. Thank you, Joe.
Well, that sort of doubling up from TVNZ might be just the kind of efficiency that ACT leader David Seymour, a shareholding minister in the state-owned broadcaster, might be looking for in 2026. Now, for 3 News viewers, the live-stream sound of Patrick Gower battling the red carpet chaos to talk to James Cameron actually cleaned up pretty well on TV.
You said before that Wellington is the greatest city on earth. Say it again, I guess.
Yeah, well, I just yelled that out to everybody and got a lot of cheers, you know. So Wellingtons they have a great pride of place. I think they have a great pride in what they can accomplish.
Very lucky to live here.
Yeah, both of you live here. You live nearby.
Yeah.
You probably could have walked down tonight, but it's pretty close.
We could have, but I think given the scale of the crowd, our security guys probably frowned on that idea.
And there was plenty more praise for Wellington from James Cameron and his wife Susie Armis. But if we rewind to February, James Cameron was the special guest at the first public meeting of a new ginger group called Vision for Wellington, and that meeting was chaired by Patrick Gower, backed by the media company Stuff and its boss. The declared purpose was to find new ways of overcoming the malaise enveloping the capital, and on stage, James Cameron complained that Wellington was unwelcoming at night, and he couldn't get a park when he drove to town.
I mean, are you talking about parking? It's a nightmare, right?
Parking is a nightmare, right?
In fact, street parking in the capital is perfectly possible off-peak, and the capital has many multi-storey car parks that are almost always empty, but expensive. But back in February, Cameron's message was that the capital's problems could be fixed with a positive mental attitude, which 3 News reported this way.
To get Wellington feeling a little less like it's in the middle of this, and instead a little more like this.
Now there, 3 News juxtaposed a scene of battle slaughter from Avatar with the stirring scenes from Titanic of Leo and Kate up on the ship's bow. Though, given that Titanic sank to the sea floor in that movie soon after, it was a pretty odd visual metaphor for giving hope to Wellington. Now, last weekend, Cameron's red carpet claim that the coolest movies could still be made in what was once the coolest little capital did sound uplifting.
This is where the biggest films get made. This is where the coolest films get made.
And not only that, but it is why we moved here, so that Jim could make the Avatar film.
Yeah.
However, just the next day, the Herald on Sunday reported that ship might have sailed. James Cameron stared out from the front page of the paper under the bleak black block capital headline,
"The business model may have collapsed."
"I can't even tell you that there will be another Avatar film," James Cameron told the paper. And then,
"We have a big problem being competitive here in New Zealand the way we used to be."
Well, the titan behind Titanic knows about things getting terminated on the screen, so when he speaks like that, people take notice. But there he echoed, unintentionally, a so-called debate that was sparked in the media the week before by someone barely known at all until this month.
Economic agenda.
Did you see this chap, Toss Brumley, complaining that our summer holidays are too long? And do you agree with him?
Well, I've got to be honest.
Apropos Mike Hosking being on holiday for 7 weeks.
4 months a year, I think it is, isn't it?
Toss Brumley turned out to be a business advisor and investor who posted this on the social network for people who consider themselves professionals, LinkedIn.
New Zealand's Christmas break has started to become way too extreme, and it's impacting our productivity on an individual business level and at the level of the economy.
And the Post and the Stuff website then published a rejig of Mr. Grumley's Reckons with a photo of people slacking in the sun and this caption.
"Relaxing on your deck chair for weeks on end at the end of each year does little for either your own business or the country's GDP.
In what world are we operating where no business discussion can happen for a period of 10 weeks? Toss Brumley asked rhetorically. But the fact Toss Brumley only offered anecdotes as evidence didn't dissuade the media from seizing on this to create a debate. On News Talk ZB, the Prime Minister, though, thought he might have had a point.
I've always been used to going back to work on the 3rd or 4th of January, and that's probably what I'll do this year.
Yeah, and so it's taking a bit of getting used to, is it?
Well, it's just, we've got a lot to sort out. We've got a lot to do, and we've got to keep moving.
And Stuff then made more headlines out of the head of the Auckland Business Chamber, Simon Bridges, echoing his successor as National Party leader. Kiwis feel entitled to a long summer, he said, but the world has changed. And then Stuff went to Labour Party leader Chris Hipkins for comment, and he said it's good if people do get a chance to take a decent holiday over the summer period. And then the story went international with this headline in The Guardian.
"See you in March. Debate in New Zealand over extremely long summer break."
The country's unofficial shutdown has sparked a national conversation, said the author of that piece, who turned out to be an intern writing the yarn from Australia, mostly based on comments made in the media here. And pondering that productivity problem in the Sunday Star Times, the editor Tracy Watkins said, "We try to bridge that gap by working more hours overall, among the most in the OECD. No wonder we desperately need a break over the summer," she concluded. Now, the business coach Toss Brumley, who started all this, prides himself on his own productivity. Back in late summer 2020, he featured in a Stuff series asking entrepreneurs how they made their first million. "I make sure my calendar is fully stacked every day and that all tasks are cleared from task lists when I have said they should be." But Toss Brumley also told Stuff this.
"My best ideas come when I take time to breathe and reflect. Generally, just after a holiday or after a few days off, I will have big ideas which can substantially change my lifestyle or the way I operate my business."
And presumably in a way that ends up being more productive. Toss Brumley certainly produced lots of time and space in the media last week, all sparked by one simple social media post that, in the end, he probably didn't spend that much time on himself. Our productivity and our economy will be hotly debated for real in 2026, which is, of course, an election year. And politicians and pressure groups are already working hard to influence the policy and public opinion. Last weekend on Media Watch, we looked at how Finance Minister Nicola Willis had been targeted by a taxpayers' union campaign of ads, online posts, and even AI video, which was soundtracked like a 1940s show tune.
Our economy is shrinking and government spending is up. Our wallet can't keep up. Taste the sugary fudge and Nicola's Fudge.
Nicola's Fudge is a tongue-in-cheek campaign by the Taxpayers Union.
And to hammer home the unsubtle message that it was time for the Finance Minister to confront the need for cuts to spending, the group sent packaged Nicola's Fudge to newsrooms. And there was even the prospect of a debate between Nicola Willis and Ruth, mother of all budgets, Richardson, the Taxpayers Union chair. ZB's Heather Duplessis-Allen was pretty keen.
The Ruth Richardson, Nicola Willis, finance girl on finance girl debate is going to happen next week. So hopefully they can reach a compromise and it doesn't fall over, because I'm getting my popcorn ready already.
But that popcorn will go stale. On Tuesday this week, it emerged that they couldn't organise a debate in a parliament or elsewhere after all.
Very important breaking news. The big debate. Here it is. Nicola Willis and Ruth Richardson is off. Ruth's pulled out. I will not be a party to a circus. This is Ruth's words from the Taxpayers Union. I will not be a party to a circus or a sideshow designed to distract from fiscal failure.
What does she think politics is? Honestly.
And whether the Taxpayers Union fudge puns and mocking AI videos were a bit circusy, Ruth Richardson didn't say. But the real breaking news about our economy had come earlier that afternoon.
A return to budget surplus is 5 years away as the government hopes a recovering economy will lift its revenue while it battles to keep a lid on spending. The half-year economic and fiscal update shows bigger deficits for longer than forecast in May, higher debt and modestly higher costs.
In fact, there were several end-of-year economic stats out this week, including the third quarter GDP figures. And ahead of that, economist Cameron Bagrie told Catherine Ryan this on 9 to noon.
New Zealand's, in my view, at a real inflection point. And there's a bit of a danger here at the moment that we get a decent GDP number in the next sort of 24 hours. Everybody sort of looks at it and think, well, everything's okay. Well, behind the scenes, things weren't as bad when we got the horrible GDP number in Q2, and things will not be as good when we get that boomer number for Q3.
All right.
We've got to sit back here and take a deep breath.
And on Wednesday night's RNZ politics panel show The Whip, senior business journalist at BusinessDesk Maria Slade said this.
A lot of people in the business community are sort of saying, well, you know, they're banging on about our debt, but in the grand scheme of things, our debt to GDP ratio is not that bad. People on the extreme right might agree with them, but I think a lot of people in the centre would, it's noise, really.
Okay. So even if many people didn't give a fudge about the Willis versus Richardson right-wing rumble, media debate about our economy and our business will intensify in election year. Maria Slade's recent investigative series, The Fall of the House of Du Val, explores not just the latest spectacular collapse of a property business, but also what New Zealanders forget about the busts and bubbles that go with the booms.
The standard retailer, investor or wholesaler, as they may be, is not thinking back to Colin Meads and not thinking back to 2008, not thinking back to South Canterbury Finance. They are seeing those things on Facebook. They're hearing about them on the radio. They're seeing gushy puff pieces in publications about the lifestyle of the founders. They're seeing Queenstown photo ops. They're seeing shiny things, sparkly things, flying things, and sponsorship and rugby, and that all looks very good.
So, seeing as the economy could be the issue that shifts political support next year, what should the media, and the users of it, be focused on? Questions for Maria Slade. Well, Maria, big week of economic data, the last, a bit of a slew of fresh stats before the end of the year. One News on Thursday had opened with the lines, Santa has delivered some Christmas cheer with the 1% GDP. The Post website had two consecutive stories there, one saying, is the economic bounce back here? Immediately below that, a Janet Wilson opinion piece saying New Zealand is poised to become a fiscal basket case. Do you think there is a danger that casual media consumers will have trouble disentangling what the reality is?
I think we're all just so desperate for a recovery. We're kind of grasping onto any little bits of good news. It's not as if the economy's suddenly taken off. And there is a lot of debate, as you've said, regarding New Zealand's debt levels and how fast we should be getting them down, and the fact that our debt to GDP level is actually quite not that bad compared to other countries, but then we haven't got the strength of the economy of other countries. It's such a fine balancing act, And Cameron Bagrie, the economist who writes a column for us on BusinessDesk, he calls it the impossible trinity: fiscal restraint, funding for infrastructure, and maybe a few tax cuts if you can afford it. And then you've still got to maintain the social services. And in his opinion, you can hit 2 but not 3. And this is an election year that's coming up. So what do you think they're going to do?
It is an election year. We will see a lot of people trying to shift political policy and public opinion. Do the media need to apply a bit of a different lens to this, knowing that a lot of what's said about these big economic problems that the country does need to confront will be from people with a vested political interest?
I think we just need to keep doing what we do, which is to report without fear or favour. Report the Taxpayers Union, but report the CTU, report the Green Party, report people who have alternate, ideological perhaps, views to that, but let the reader or the listener decide for themselves, report all sides of the story. The minute we stop doing that, I think we've lost.
The media is always going to be reporting on this stuff from the point of view of individuals and their finances, and stuff about property prices and personal wealth will be the stuff that returns them the engagement they need.
Well, I think that's where you get outlets like BusinessDesk, because we try and report about things from the business side of it. We actually don't do a lot of personal finance. And actually, this is something that we've covered in the Du Val podcast that we've just released. We've got Sharon Zollner, the ANZ chief economist, talking about how the property market, in her words, is not going to look remotely like it did in the last 30 years in the next 30 years. So it's going to be a different scene, and I'm not sure that Kiwis have got their heads around that yet. And yeah, this flows into investing in property, and as we discuss in the Du Val podcast about investing in property schemes, and the hope that New Zealanders will start learning their lessons that it's not necessarily safe as houses, and with property investment you kind of got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, indeed. And that series, The Fall of the House of Du Val, but then in separate episodes you have people saying it's really distressing that the lessons of things like South Canterbury Finance and the GFC 10 and 15 years ago, people just seem to forget them. It's quite weird to think they were such a big deal, so much money, so many headlines, a lot of pain, and yet all of it seemed to have been forgotten when it came round to 2021.
That's right. Dean Anderson, who's the founder of Kernel Wealth, the wealth manager, he's particularly hot on this. He says, there's a certain group of people that got burnt by the finance companies or Blue Chip or whatever it was, and they remember. But the wider New Zealand psyche doesn't seem to have absorbed it. And almost seasonally, we keep seeing these schemes popping up again.
And he was saying the media's got a part in this, haven't they? Because he said people they hear radio ads, they see publications.
That was Chris Welsh from Money Hub, actually, the two of them having a conversation. But yes,
Sorry,
exactly.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yes, exactly. No, that's the point exactly. I'm going to get shot at work for this, but our One Roof that NZME owns is criticised for the same sort of thing, talking up the property market. You only see the good side, you only see the wins, you don't see the downs, and the hope is that New Zealanders will start learning a few lessons, and that's one of the reasons the Brian Gaynor Investigative Journalism Initiative wanted to support our podcast. I went to them and applied for some funding, and then NZME kind of picked it up and rolled with it. But that's their hope, to try and create a more mature investing public. Brian Gaynor himself was very hot on that.
As you mentioned, it came from the funding came from the Milford Foundation's Brian Gaynor Business Journalism Initiative, and Brian Gaynor, the founder of Milford Asset Management, a big believer, columnist for the Herald for years, a big believer in the media's power to investigate stuff. Would this sort of thing have been possible without it?
Certainly when I was trying to push the idea of doing this, no. And I think what they're doing is just so important and so incredible. And another example of that is my colleague Matt Nippett's investigation into the Cook Islands, flagging the shadow fleet, effectively, the fleet of oil tankers that take, illicit oil from Russia and sell it, and Iran, and sell it to places like China. To do that, he went to New York to a course by a data outfit called Bellingcat, which specialise in all this kind of data and journalism, effectively. And that kind of got him going. And then he got onto an outfit in Wellington, actually, called Starboard Marine Intelligence. They do all this incredible data mining where they match satellite images with shipping records, with, shipping movements, with I don't know what. And they came up with this model, effectively, showing the routes that these ships were taking, and then they weren't going anywhere near the Cook Islands, that's for sure. And he had to go to Rarotonga, not that he could get the Cook Islands government to speak to him, but he was able to get over there and get in front of them and, confront them with this story. Not all that would have been possible without the support of the Gaynor Fund. So I think as it builds and as the journalism community understands that it's there and what sort of things they're prepared to support, I think journalists will come up with more ideas and more applications, and we'll see a bit more of it. So I think it's really beginning to make its mark in New Zealand investigative journalism. Like my former colleague Hamish McNichol, co-editor at NBR, he got some funding to do a course on how to read accounts and to better report the financials of companies, and he found that really invaluable, and he's now looking out for things that he wouldn't have looked for before.
So I guess if the media industry was flush with cash and revenue, they would be able to fund these sorts of things themselves. But as we know, it's really difficult these days. And in fact, in those quarter 3 GDP figures that came out, it was kind of sad to hear that one of the sectors that didn't grow, that contracted in quarter 3, was media and communications. Now, obviously, the news media only be a tiny bit of that, but it felt to me like this was a year when, in fact, compared to last year, things had stabilised a little. Is that your feeling about the news media in 2025 as the year comes to an end?
I would say cautiously yes, and it depends where you look. For example, NZME came out with an earnings guidance upgrade in October, so that's a good sign. I know BusinessDesk's own subscriptions are going up and up and up. We've had actually quite a good year. And in NZME's case, one thing they've done this year is they launched the Herald Now breakfast program, which is live streamed. But one of the most important things about that is it creates video content. And then that itself can generate an opportunity for more advertising content. It's not so much that they want people to sit down and watch the whole 2 hours live on their phones or their laptops or whatever, although some people, I think, do watch it. We'll see how that one goes in 2026.
And even signs that TVNZ is going to launch a new business program, which is a throwback to the old days when there used to be like a half hour or even an hour long shows devoted to business ahead of the morning breakfast TV news shows.
That's right. But look, in my humble opinion, I think Herald Now is doing a good thing in that it's much more news and current affairs. And I think breakfast TV never attracted me for that reason. It was too magazine-y, too light.
You're not just saying that because BusinessDesk has a big presence and the likes of yourself and Garth Bray are on sometimes obviously, twice in a single episode.
Obviously I'm biased. But no, that is my honestly held opinion. I do think they're doing quite a good job with it.
Hey, you mentioned with the Du Val company, the Clarks, coming back at people who had criticised them, going legal effectively. We had a bit of a surprise that the judge in the defamation case that Talleys launched against TVNZ came back with the judgment. I think people hadn't been expecting to see it until the new year or even Easter, they'd signalled, but it was out this week and the judge has thrown that case out. So really unusual that a big company like Talleys would sue for defamation because it's usually individuals, not companies. That's a good precedent for the media that a big company can't take on a news outlet like that?
I think kudos to TVNZ for sticking to their guns over that one, absolutely. And it actually goes wider than that because there is a school of thought that actions like that are what they call slap suits. And I don't know if you've come across this one, but it stands...
SLAPP, yeah.
That's right, strategic litigation against public participation. And it's basically lawsuits designed to shut people up. And some people would argue that's what the Talleys were trying to do with that one. And our law is clear. If you're a corporate suing for defamation, you've got to show financial disadvantage, that you've lost out as a result of that coverage. Well, the Talleys very much failed to do that.
In fact, the judgment was pretty clear, saying not only had they failed to indicate they had genuine pecuniary loss because of what TVNZ had broadcast, that TVNZ's communication was responsible, that's the legal terminology, on a matter of public interest. So TVNZ would still have succeeded, according to this judgment, even if Talleys had been convincing to the judge that they'd suffered pecuniary loss.
Yes, and the thing that you have to remember is that New Zealand defamation law hasn't changed since about 1992. And, we barely had the internet then and social media hadn't been invented. So a lot's happened since. And in a lot of countries now, the UK and parts of Canada and the US, there is legislation banning slap suits. So they wouldn't even get that far. There's an academic down at Canterbury University, Mark Hanna, who's from Northern Ireland, and he's studied slap suits. And we talked to him for the podcast, actually. Yeah, and he's very clear that they should be banned, these kinds of, if something can be proved to be a slap. And actually only a court can decide that. But they should be banned because they're just taking up court time. They are just trying to prove a point, really, not gain genuine justice for people.
And the Talleys made a point of saying, we have the resources to do this. We're not seeking damages. We just want an apology and a recognition that the story was unfair. And the story, for those who didn't know it, involved whistleblowers saying that there were health and safety lapses at Talleys plants. And Talleys objected to the way that was presented by TVNZ, that some alleged quotes from some of these people were not, in fact, verbatim as had been delivered to them and wouldn't stand up in that way, but that a potential chilling effect against whistleblowing has been removed with this case not proceeding any further.
Oh, cases like that sort of thing, that's a threat to journalism, it's a threat to democracy. Kudos to TVNZ for really drawing a line in the sand over that and sticking with it. I mean, the resource it must have taken, I hate to think how much it's cost them to defend that one. And the effect on Thomas Mead as well, full support to him for standing up for his journalism.
They're actually facing down another defamation suit in court this very week, haven't they, with Julian Batchelor of the Stop Co-Governance campaign complaining about reporting. And it's emerged that a director of NZME, James Grenon, a billionaire or nearly from Canada, who, tried to basically roll the existing board right at the start of the year, is bankrolling this campaign. Extraordinary, isn't it, to have a director of one media company funding a defamation suit about the news and journalism of another?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the director of my own company, so I better couch what I say carefully. But at the time when that whole boardroom battle was going on with NZME, my own kind of view was, I wonder if you really understand how journalism works. That we do actually try and balance things, as we've talked about. We do actually try and be objective and report down the line, unless it's an opinion piece or something, of course.
And it could be that his support for this particular cause, predated his effort to become involved on the board. Who knows? But, when that one is resolved, it's certainly going to be part of the reporting because, it wasn't until the court case began his involvement in that one was actually revealed. And finally, Maria, just to end where we began this particular program, there was extraordinary amount, I thought, of debate. A so-called media debate erupted around something that sprang out of one single LinkedIn post, a guy called Toss Grumley saying our summer holiday is so long that it affects our productivity and our economic growth. Has he got a point?
Well, actually, we made an interesting discovery just the other week. My colleague Dileepa Fonseca was putting in an OIA request, an Official Information Act request to a government department, and was told, well, and you know how you get 20 working days, they have 20 working days to respond.
Yeah.
He was told, well, actually, that's 20 working days following the 3 weeks that we've got off. Apparently, that is the rule. We didn't know that. So that's quite a long way down the track. We'll be expecting a result on that particular OIA. So we were kind of laughing about how it's built into the rules. And of course, the court's all shut down. Don't expect the High Court to be doing anything until the end of January. And we always say they complain about how there's never enough court time, and yet they take a 6-week break over Christmas. So there are certain arguments that perhaps we are a bit lax. And actually, I have to say, your own morning report annoys me. I think they could get back to work about a week earlier than they do. But that's my view. But look, on the flip side of it, I also think that it kind of sets the New Zealand culture and psyche apart from other parts of the world, and it is kind of cool that we do all just take a break. Not much happens during that time, but then you could argue nothing happens because no one's at work. But it is a pretty quiet time news-wise. If you've ever worked over the Christmas holidays, you're kind of struggling around for news stories because literally the country shuts up and goes to the beach. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing.
I will have a word with Morning Report about coming back a week earlier, but it might have to wait till the end of January when I get back, if that's okay. But in seriousness, is this something that had been discussed? Because it seemed to me that when that post burst out, that stuff leapt on it and thought, oh, this will create a bit of engagement, as the news flow was probably already starting to taper off before Christmas. And it seemed to me to be quite sort of opportunistic and not a genuine issue. But is it something that had been discussed in news and business circles, that things take too long to fire up again after summer?
Potentially we do take it a bit far. I mean, don't even try and find an accountant or a lawyer till the end of January. They're all at their batches. Maybe the sort of 2 or 3 weeks over Christmas would be enough, and then we could kind of get back to it. And maybe people could take holidays later in the year. I guess in terms of the news media, it is quite a nice time to reflect. We all have to file our summer copy. I just filed one yesterday, a more sort of magazine-y piece about an issue I'd been following during the year. And it is quite a nice time to reflect and maybe get some of those deeper thinking pieces done that aren't necessarily predicated on breaking news.
And Fall of the House of Du Val, the series that's running right up to Christmas, is it?
It is. Last episode out on Monday the 22nd. We've been really pleased with how well it's done. But one of the things we have tried to do is make it accessible to a general audience, of course, and that was Gaynor's aim, to try and get New Zealanders thinking about this and be perhaps a little bit wiser when they see those ads flash up on Facebook for sort of 12% returns.
Well, thanks so much for spending the time with us and working right up to Christmas in order to give us a bit of content both in this program and in your series. Please don't begrudge me my January off.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
That was Maria Slade, senior business journalist and property editor at BusinessDesk and the driver of the investigative series and podcast, The Fall of the House of Du Val, which, as we heard there, is funded by the Milford Foundation's Brian Gaynor Business Journalism Initiative. Well, that's it for this year. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again in the first week of February 2026. In the meantime, our Media Watch Award for some of the best, worst and weirdest of our media in 2026 were handed out last Wednesday on Midweek Media Watch with the help of Night's host Emile Donovan. If you missed that, it's in our podcast feed. If you have any thoughts for us about what you see in the media between now and the end of January, do get in touch. Email us, mediawatch@rnz.co.nz, and you'll also find us at MediaWatchNZ on X. And you can even write us an old-fashioned letter and send it to Media Watch, PO Box 123 Wellington. In the meantime, follow Media Watch and listen on any podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode.